Bitcoin and energy go together like two peas in a pod? Huh.
Everybody knows that, Dad.
Well, did you know that donkeys make great crew members?
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another week of Big Digital Energy. We can no longer just say BDE because when you actually Google BDE, you get some not safe for work results.
Yeah, you get pornographic websites.
Or if you search it on the podcast, it's Big Dykes Energy.
Yeah.
And so,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And we don't judge. It's just we'd much rather
No.
be.
All right. I'm going to Urban Dictionary.
Yeah,
Who's
we're-
the source of everything. So
So it's Big Digital Energy when you search.
Yeah, so we'll start referring to the show as Big Digital Energy. Also, some changes. We're going to try taking away the live component because we've had nothing but issues with live streaming software. So we're just going to try this out and see how it works. And should be good, though.
the first and
Stay
probably most accurate definition for BDE on Urban Dictionary, which is my source.
Yeah.
It stands for big dick energy. If you have confidence but aren't cocky about it, if you have BDE, if you are a try-hard about it, then you don't radiate BDE. So
See.
let's use it in the sentence.
That's what it meant.
Most of the people who searched up BDE definition just to nod their head and say, that's me, even though they already knew the definition, most likely are try-hards.
This might
with
be
no
the most
BDE.
boomer thing that's ever happened on here. And I've been doing a podcast here for 2 some odd years.
So, yes, I mean, BDE did stand for Big Dick Energy before we started our podcast, and now it stands for Big Digital Energy.
Hell yeah.
And so we
So
got
spell
the-
it out.
we have the Big Digital
Spell it
Energy.
Edit.
All right, what do we
All
got?
right,
What do we
all
got
right.
on the What do we got on the docket today?
I'm going number 1 right here. BP, we talked about that last week, but I read their press release. Actually, BBC did an article on this. This is crazy. So last year they had $28 billion worth of profit. UK has created an energy profits levy. You know, the British are so polite. A levy. But it basically is on the extraordinary profits made from extracting UK oil and gas. So it was originally 25%. It's now 35%.
Mm-hmm.
The corporate income tax is 30%. There is a supplemental 10% tax, which I don't understand what is for. So their total tax rate on their UK oil and gas assets, 75%. So get this. The
That's
UK
insane.
business made less than 10% of the global profits for BP. So less than $2.8 billion. They're paying $2.2 billion in taxes to the UK. $700 million of it is windfall profits tax.
That's insane.
Wow. Isn't that crazy?
That's insane.
I'm just laughing at Shell, who just a few years ago moved its headquarters from The Hague in the Netherlands to the UK, to London. They're probably now thinking, we just made a really bad decision.
Well,
We
why
o-
did they
we
not
offered
move to?
to
Yeah,
Houston.
we said it on the show. They should have moved HQ to Houston.
I know, well, they hate Houston, but I can attest that having worked there.
I
All
wanna-
you former Shell people, we all know it. And
Yeah, I wanna dive in
YL,
on
you know
this.
this. YL, the CEO now, YL's one of my buds. YL, you're CEO now. You lived in Houston. He can tell, but he won't say it.
Yeah,
But he'll listen to his broadcast and go, he's right.
they know they messed up. But that's crazy. 75% of your profit going to the government. I mean,
Why
Talk about-
is like the government the person that's the arbiter of windfall profits? It's like
Yeah.
if you gave it to poor people that bought gasoline, okay, I could see that maybe.
Yeah.
Or I could see it, grandma needs to heat her house in the winter. Okay. But the government, I mean, what do they do?
yeah, I think it's interesting that that's happening to BP because I mean, BP's kind of, I don't know if any major deserves it. It's probably them, right? I think
No one deserves it.
no one deserves it, but BP's kind of gone to the. I don't want to say they haven't gotten woke,
progressive
but
end of the spectrum.
yes, there you go. That's a very elegant
We've talked a
way
little
of
bit about this.
saying that. But I think, did y'all talk about the BP report last week? Did y'all talk about that?
We did.
That was on-
Mark
yeah.
touched on it.
Yeah, we
And so I didn't get to join on the show, but I wanted to talk about
By
that
the way, how's
because
the prostate?
I
Is it
was,
better?
you walked right into
it's been
that.
a rough month. It's been a rough
Yeah.
month. But, I think we talked about on the show like 1 or 2 months ago that BP was considering stopping that report because it didn't align with their internal
That's right.
mission that they wanted to do. And so, anyways, I just
Well,
think that
I think a little bit of reality is set in terms of their underperformance from a stock perspective. And when those things happen over a longer period of time, executives and boards start to worry about their own
their compensation,
for
their
existence.
Right.
jobs.
their
So what
own
do you-
stability.
What do you think second order effects are of that happening? Chuck, you said 10% of their profit comes from UK. So, I mean, it's not a big part of their business, but to hear that that's 2.7 billion and they're paying 2.2 billion in taxes, I mean,
crazy.
it's got to disincentivize a company of operating there, right?
You got to imagine the shareholders are going to start either pulling their investment or, as we are seeing with Salesforce, which is interesting. We'll talk about it a little bit later. Elliott Management's coming in because when you start both moving too far forward in anything that takes away from profits, in this case, it'd be renewables, or what we're talking about is taxes, I think you're going to see either the management team saying, I'm going to get sacked, fired, so I better do something, or you're going to see activist investors step aboard. And my blog this Thursday goes back to a blog I wrote 2 years ago, kind of talking about this whole phenomenon of like, hey, everything looks good, but once shareholders start saying, wait, you're minimizing profits or you're destroying shareholder value, they step in and management teams get sacked. So I think Bernard is trying to be smart here. We'll see what he does.
Well, what that means, just translating to what everybody watches, is how fast are you going to cut your global oil production, which is the source of emissions to the the outside observer. And they tapped the brakes a little bit here in this report. They were supposed to be down, or the target was to be down by 40% by the end of the decade, and now that's been dropped to 25%.
By the way, can I just
Quite a
brag
bit,
on
that's
brag on Mark for a second? After he has got so many good compelling notes. He had over 12,000 fans last week just jam our social media about how great he was. 12,000.
12,000.
There we go. Well, no, while he's rolling, because I think this just rolls right into it.
Love it.
Mark, why do you think investors, consumers, environmentalists are trying to get the majors to become renewables companies? Is there anybody else out there that might be better?
Well, I think for one extreme end of the spectrum, this is, paying for past sins, right? Fix the problem by pivoting the business model completely from oil and gas production to producing nothing but renewable energy. And we've seen various responses to that, as you just alluded to, across the majors, which I've found very interesting. And so I actually have a view that's shared by some others, which is, why would we want the majors to do that?
That's
Right.
That's exactly the
One,
conversation.
The majors are 10% of global oil production, so they don't really move the market. Now, that doesn't mean they shouldn't operate responsibly and do things like capture fugitive methane and do all those things. But the core business model, which for a long period of time they weren't very good at as measured by long-term returns performance, now they're turning that around, so to speak. Why would there be from a practical standpoint, why would there be an expectation you could pivot that whole business model and culture to producing, solar panels and wind turbines, to put it simply? Credit to Mike Wirth, who we talked about a year and a half ago when Chevron had their new energies roll out. He said, we've decided deliberately not to pursue, new business in solar and wind because we just, paraphrasing, we're not competitive and we can't generate.
Yeah, there's lower
competitive returns.
profits. I mean, it's
Right.
going to reduce the profits of the company.
I would argue that, Apple, which is about 4.5 times the size of Exxon, is way better at the skills of solar and wind, for example, which is manufacturing and assembly. The majors produce raw materials. They're extractive. They do process, and they produce the building blocks for a lot of things. They're not.
I also
they're
think
not
Apple's
manufacturers.
smarter because you sell AirPods. No one blinks an eye about how much money you make on those.
However, the only contrary I'll say, Mark, to this is both Apple and Google have been struggling to hire people that understand energy. So, I mean, sure, they understand the pieces of it, but they don't understand. They don't get it, and that's been a struggle in the Bay Area for quite a bit of time.
Right.
Which I think is also a problem because the tech companies have such a heavy influence on dictating what utilities are doing and planning for their energy mix, because they're saying, hey, we want 100% renewables on our servers. And we have these huge demand centers and we want 100% renewables. And so the utilities start catering to them, right? And
I wrote an entire strategic narrative for a giant company that will not be named that they're using moving forward because of this phenomenon. Now, one of the things I've been sort of a proponent of is, why are the tech companies being blamed? I mean, the reason why we need more power is we have iPhones and iPads and Teslas, and they create all the creating all the power needs.
Chuck, how many rants have I gone on? Man? You know, everyone's bitch and complaint about Bitcoin mining is how much energy it consumes, and it's dirty, it's a waste of energy, but no one ever questions how much power the Xbox Live network consumes.
Or I need same day delivery for my dog treats. Yet Exxon is responsible for accounting for the Scope 3 emissions of the Amazon delivery truck.
You know,
ordered one toothbrush and got it same day delivery.
I mean, the cap on the UK energy bills, I think, is $3,000 a year, right? You know, because the government's subsidizing the rest. iPhone costs $1,000.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, this is 1/3 of your energy bill, and they're using child slave labor to build this.
Yeah.
That's
we don't
true.
talk about that.
And then number two,
there's lots of things we don't.
Yeah,
except on BDE.
all the rare metals they need to make this, the cobalt and all that. We've been talking about that for a month now. It's slave labor in the Congo.
I saw something related, just getting back to the kind of mandated or government intrusion into private business, and it'll probably come up tonight in the State of the Union. Forget the source of it, but apparently the president is going to propose something akin to a buyback surcharge.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
Because right now we're at 1%, right? You've got if you do a buyback, don't you have to pay 1%?
Are we talking about share buybacks?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's going to amp that up potentially.
So you already have to pay 1%?
I think you have to. I think that was part of the last tax thing, is that you've got to pay 1%, but maybe
I've kind of started drifting towards the camp where I think share buybacks are a grift.
So political and regulatory intervention is pointed, I think, as we collectively believe, not in the right direction on some of this, whether it's adding layers of taxation to UK revenues for UK producers, or, making the majors responsible for Scope 3 emissions, or completely changing a business model to meet some future state that currently is not, I think, is evidenced by BP tapping the brakes. And if the debate over whether to publish the energy outlook is true, the internal debate is true, is, are we imperiling the economic reason for being, which is to generate returns?
Yeah. I mean, you're attacking the root of capitalism, right?
I mean, the only reason we have share buybacks is that's the tax efficient way to do it, right? So if I loan a company money and they pay me interest, they deduct the interest payment. So they get a tax write-off for that. And the interest I get, I pay taxes on. If I buy a share, that corporation pays taxes on the profits. And then when they send me a dividend, I pay taxes too. So the way all a share buyback is you pay taxes at the corporation for the profits, and then you buy a share back. And instead of owning, 10% of the company after the buyback, I now own 13%.
Yeah, but here's the problem.
So my dividends.
This is when not to get too off topic here, but I want to hear y'all's opinion on this. 2020, the airlines get bailed out, right? After performing all these share buybacks. And so they were privatizing the gains and subsidizing the losses. And so instead of paying out dividends to shareholders and actually making their investors money, start using their money to buy back shares, and then they get bailed out by the government. And I just think that
well, that's bad government policy. That's not necessarily a problem with share buybacks, because share buybacks, same thing as dividend. It's just a different way
bad
to
government
do it.
policy, but it's also corporations taking
but
advantage of
you're
it.
taking on another hot button for me. It's why is the government bailing out anybody?
Yeah.
And they get bailed out, which means like, well, they should just let the market kill them. If they made bad decisions, why are we bailing those fuckers out?
No, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm a true capitalist. Like, hey, if you can't fucking make it in the
I mean,
market,
GE
then-
is the sort of the
For a
the
sector
anchor.
that's familiar with the ability to repeat itself in the bankruptcy cycle, then
Yeah,
there's
that's like
a-
a core
there's a-
competency
yeah,
of
there's-
being an airline.
there's a mechanism already in place, so you can.
I bet
I'm pretty sure
friends
oil
have
and
made so much
gas
money on
companies, like part of your
bankruptcies.
business plan is bankruptcy. And,
Yeah.
like that's part of
I mean, and I would never want to be in the camp. I'm the resident libertarian here. I'd never want to be in the camp of defending.
You're not the
but
only one.
The argument for the bailouts was the government shut down commerce. So it was, I guess you can insure for a pandemic, like Wimbledon did.
I don't know, man. I've always been super, I've always consider myself libertarian, but also understand that government plays important roles in society. And so that's always a fine line to walk there. But when it comes to capitalism, like we don't have true capitalism. And after 2020, I got super sour about it. I didn't get PPP loans. I didn't get stimulus checks. Like
Stimmy.
I don't get shit. And
Well, you know what was great?
maybe I just don't play the game right, but
You should
So
have.
yeah, shouldn't have to. I want, if you can't cut it in business and you're over levered or you didn't prepare.
I mean, it's a
then-
black swan event that happened to
Yeah.
some degrees. Some people clearly knew what was going on, but
Well, hold on. This is the greatest story, though. So Wimbledon, every year for a gazillion years, has spent $2 million a year insuring against a pandemic. Because there was some old fucker on the board that lived through the Spanish flu
They knew.
back in 1918. So damn it, we're gonna do it. And anyway, when they had to cancel Wimbledon, they got paid out their TV rights of whatever it was, $180 million. And that guy's like, I was right.
Right.
I told you.
You only got to be right once.
still alive.
that's all you have to do is one time.
See, you can survive this. What's the big deal?
Yeah, what's the deal?
So, anyways, what do we got next?
All right,
Get off
so
our libertarian rant.
so
here.
let's do this real quick. Interesting side note story. Eugene, Oregon, first city in Oregon to require all new homes to go all electric. No more gas grills in Eugene.
Thank God. It was
Oregon.
saving people's lives. Thank goodness. The government does save people.
Eugene, Oregon's, the type of place where you'll see that stuff happen. I'm actually like, did we talk about it on BDE a few weeks ago about natural gas refrigerators?
Big digital energy.
Big
Big
digital energy.
digital energy. We did.
Yeah, that blew my mind that natural gas refrigerators were a thing.
Particularly in Alaska.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say, I'll give Eugene, Oregon props on this. They can do this because I think 80% of their electricity comes from hydro.
Yeah, it probably
That's
comes from
right.
hydro.
That's
So
Yeah.
that they're walking the walk, talking the talk. But
Yeah.
they've got to realize that a lot of us don't have rivers that we can dam up.
I mean,
right
they
there.
don't. Eugene, Oregon doesn't have a natural gas basin located right next
No.
to it that they can pipe nat gas to very easily, right? And so I was actually just talking about that with Crystal, who just started at Digital Wildcatters yesterday. I was telling her, it's like, hey, energy is very much geographically dependent.
Absolutely.
If you're up in the Northwest in Canada, you have a ton of hydropower. Cool. Like, that's awesome. Out in the desert in West Texas, you don't have any water at all.
So
It's like,
hydro.
no hydro at all. Like, go
There
build out
was,
a dam in
a
Midland.
run
It's like-
at some CBM, as I recall, back in the early 2000s in Oregon. So
was there?
yeah,
There's a natural gas field in Washington State. That,
Probably on the east
we-
side of Washington State.
Yeah, we looked at it one time, and it just was like, why would we want to go to?
Wait, I was just reading one of your
Seattle?
tweets, Senor, about how long would it take to get a permit to drill in California? So the government you just propped up, and now let's take the opposite of is the regulations in the Northeast are in the south and on the West coast is just very difficult.
Yeah. No, 100%. And so, the thing is there's this whole debate about, one, there's this push about natural gas stoves aren't healthy inside your house. And I think
no one ever.
I think that it's debatable, to be honest. And I also think it's comical that we're blaming such a small percentage of asthma cases on natural gas stoves and not looking at diet and things that, like, there's much larger problems.
We keep hitting topics we shouldn't talk
Yeah,
about.
no. We're going deep. We're going deep today.
Collin's back.
Welcome to this week's BDE.
Yeah, but I deal with this a lot on Twitter because a lot of people think that there's some huge conspiracy of oil and gas companies putting a ton of money into propaganda saying that you need to have a natural gas stove to have better meals. And I think that's just absurd. I think that it's absurd that people think that that's a thing.
All you need to do is just observe for like 30 seconds. You realize that gas cooks so much better than electricity.
I'll die on that hill too.
I've lived
as someone that fancies himself a chef. Natural gas so much.
I've
better
lived
than
in
electricity.
a home with a
come
natural
on.
gas stove all my life, have no asthma, fucking elite when it comes to cardiovascular health. Like, I'm just gonna put that out there. Obviously, I'm one
Well, you know what
person,
the
but
new research said, that it actually leads to prostate injuries later in life.
That's right.
There you go.
that explains a lot. But what's happening, and I want to give a shout out to man, I know his real name. What's his anon on Twitter? I can't think of it. But anyways,
what's the anon?
is it Harold Ham?
Oh,
it
Hambone.
Hambone,
Who's now
yeah.
Wampum.
Wampum. There you
Wampum.
go. Kind
There
of
we
remember
go.
Wampum. Give a shout out to Wampum because last month he put out a tweet. He said, this is a dog whistle for
Shit.
universities and research institutions to go out and start finding research that natural gas stoves are bad for your health.
Well,
And so
that's the original research that's been cited as the basis for doing this came out of Stanford originally, which conducted the tests with a gas stove in a facility that was completely sealed off.
yeah, no
by
ventilation.
by plastic with no ventilation.
Yeah. So it's not realistic. It's not realistic.
Yeah, when I heat my house, I heat all of downtown Richmond because my house was built in 1897.
Chuck's
It's out
house
of
has
wood.
no
And thank
I
goodness.
No
I
insulation at all.
I
Yeah.
air conditioned downtown Richmond. So
Yeah. So, anyways,
Speaking of bad, stupid governments, our guy Kirk wants to go on a little bit of a rant here about Europe. So tell us let's update Europe. What the hell's happening in Italy? I don't get it.
Well, Italy.
Number one, Europe was so damn lucky by the weather. So
warmest winter since 1881.
lucky as hell.
Right.
But there's a few things happening in Europe. First is the Enel chief, who's CEO of the largest renewable company in the world. They have over 56 gigawatts of energy under management. The conservative Italian government's looking to sack him. And part of the reason that they want to sack him is he spent all this time converting Enel over into this renewable company while closing down coal plants and being more reliant upon Russian gas. So from a fiscally responsible perspective, a government that's looking out for its citizens arguably is saying he hasn't done a good job managing the business. Now, people would applaud, being in the business. People are like, Enel is the model. Look at what he's done. Profits have not been as good. Gas is not, they're not as reliant from a power structure. So I think that's a really interesting thing to watch. Secondly, we're seeing a lot of U.S. companies not able to get funding for new LNG export facilities because Europe will not sign these long-term deals. And traditionally, when you're spending billions of dollars building these super long-term LNG plants, you need long-term contracts to be able to raise money.
Yeah.
Well, Europeans aren't doing it. Now, I do see an interest for the traders because Europeans are going to have to do just very short-term deals. But LNG facilities are really struggling in the U.S. to export because the Europeans are like, wait a minute, a 20-year deal gets too close to 2050. We have these climate goals. And I'm saying maybe climate goals are not going to be, it'll be interesting to watch because the third bullet point that I'm
Just go ahead and say that
Hang
they
on.
aren't going to happen. I mean, when those started getting set 8 years ago, whenever that started happening, there's no realistic way to get to that.
And we saw the great irony too in the last couple of years, especially with you're burning more wood pellets in Europe, which are actually sourced in the United States from
Yeah,
not
but
bad for
mature
smoking
forest.
meat, but you know,
chop down our forests, grind it
Pretty
down,
poor
and then put
emissions
it on.
profile.
Yeah.
terrible.
So
Terrible.
the interesting thing about NL and Italy, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like people are fucking around and finding out that economics don't actually align with ideals. Is that correct? That you
That's
set out
correct.
these ideals and then 5-10 years later, the economics don't play out. And it's unfortunate for people like that, like the CEO of that company. It's like, hey, I'm doing what the market's told me
And
to
the
do.
CEO has actually been quoted multiple times for advocating a drastic reduction in gas consumption. So Italians are saying, wait a minute, my cost of living has gone way up because of energy prices. Great, we're saving the planet, but I'm dying here.
Yeah.
I can't use gas. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, and in this past winter, in the lead up, when there was, apparent shortage, if we'd had a normal or colder than normal winter in Europe, you had European buyers who had the wherewithal to price Asian buyers who did not out of critical spot cargoes. Right. You saw Pakistan several times, I think, tender for single or a handful of cargoes, and they would get no bid.
Yeah.
You and I were talking about this earlier. We really need to create the index that how many people die when energy is high in price. That needs to be publicized.
You sent
'Cause
some
people
good
do.
chart earlier around on text about this, about
Yeah.
like countries rich and our lower energy prices, the
there's-
wealth.
Oh, I saw that chart. Yeah, it was a good chart.
There's no
Yeah.
advanced economy that runs on high energy prices.
And what about the Germans? Like you sent another chart I thought was interesting that we should post here.
I didn't see this one.
about Germans aren't saving enough gas. So Germany is urging households to reduce energy consumption because once again, they shut down all their coal facilities and are relying upon Russian gas and can't build renewables
they
fast
started
enough.
conservation, I believe, June of last year, and they haven't lifted up on it yet. So I know of somebody that was driving around Germany and lights are off, and you walk into the building, it's freezing cold.
Can't get your strudel.
Yeah, there was this conversation happening on Twitter a couple days ago.
I thought you were off Twitter.
No, I've been on Twitter. I'm still on. I just don't find it as valuable as I did. But I did find something valuable here, so I'll share it. But this guy tweets out about people in New York. He's like, hey, these systems are designed to where if it gets to 5 degrees, your building is going to be 65 degrees on the inside. So don't be mad about it. Just appreciate that that's the way that the building was designed. And one of my friends who's he's very into electrification. He's kind of like me, except on the electricity side. He grew up as a lineman, and then he's just very active on Twitter now. And he's like, this is the most academic response I've ever seen. Like, be happy that your house is under 65 degrees. And me and him were going back and forth, just kind of clowning on these people, because it's like, if your value proposition for energy transition is a degradation in quality of life, that's not going to fly with
Never happened.
most Americans. Like most Americans I know, hey, it's 5 degrees outside. I want my house to be 72. I want to be warm
point
on
is
site.
just say it.
Yeah.
Just tell us. That's my
Or
argument.
hey, you get a fireplace, burn wood. Yeah, I'm sure that's better for you than natural gas.
We've been trying to impose cafe standards for 30 years, and the consumer choice went the other way, which
What are
is
cafe standards?
gasoline
Oh, okay.
mileage standards. And so you've seen the shift away from smaller sedans over time to larger, more
We drive
performance-oriented
SUVs.
vehicles.
Yeah.
Right. We're driving way more SUVs.
Yeah.
The Excursion we thought was
And what's the number one
Tesla's new truck is pretty damn
Dude, the
good.
Excursion with the 7.3 diesel in it was just like primo. Like, we need to bring that back.
Sorry, Mark. I was derailed.
No,
you
that's-
there.
No, it's actually funny. One of my friends came over here, and he's Irish, lives in Norway, and he's a coworker. He came over to help me with some jobs, and I picked him up in a Ford Expedition. And he's like, "Holy shit!" He's like, "This is a fucking boat." He's like, "I can't believe you have cars this big over here." And that's just like something that's part of American culture. But it's actually funny because I saw a guy on Twitter the other day from Washington, D.C. He's down in Texas, some like rural town in Texas, takes a picture from his car. There's a dually. It's like a Dodge dually truck in front of him. He's like, "Oh, yeah, this seems like a sensible thing to drive around." I'm like, "Yeah, dog, you're in rural Texas. Like, people actually fucking work with trucks down here, not in Washington, D.C.
Shotgun rack behind your
Got the arc
Hell
welder.
Yeah. Why don't you go walk up to his window and tell him that he shouldn't be driving that truck? See how
We
that
should
plays
string
out
deer
for
on
you.
front of the truck, you know?
Yeah. So
I did pull some interesting data, which this is just side note. Let's move on. But public spending on energy R&D. So Paris International Energy Agency said in 2021, the total public spending was $38 billion. So China is leading by far than the US and Europe. It's not even like, that's nothing. I mean, so it's actually interesting that we have all these energy problems. The media is saying, hey, let's move to renewables. But when you actually look at government spending money on technology, they're not spending anything. What would say you on that?
Well,
that's actually where I think like the biggest value of government is investing in technology that doesn't make sense for private companies to invest in because they're not going to make money on it. And I mean, you see that like, you know, Hitler and the Nazis, for all the bad things that they did, a lot of technology that we use today came from them and as a result of World War II, right? And so
sending
governments...
a man to the moon, same sort of thing. We got Tang out
I thought that was fake though, right?
Yeah. Is that where we're going to take it?
No, I'm kidding.
Where did JFK give that speech? Rice Stadium. Send a man to the moon. And, you know, he goes on his rant about why climb the highest mountain, why the line right before he says, why go to the moon? He actually says, and when you go see the speech in the JFK Museum, it's written in his handwriting. It says, why does Rice play Texas in football? We do these things because they're hard, not because they're easy. But anyway, sorry. We got Tang and Velcro out of the moon.
That was amazing.
Sorry.
That's actually that's good. I always forget about that until you bring it up.
And I bring it up a lot.
What about Tang Zero? Everyone else is doing it, but I'd try that.
Tang Zero.
Tang Zero.
You know, like Coke Zero.
This is a kid-friendly show. Will you please stop?
Like Tang the orange juice?
Whoa.
No, they
Well, the
NASA,
faux orange something.
He doesn't know what Tang is.
NASA design came up with that for the astronauts.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Tang was an orange juice. That
we
stuff
grew
was
up
nasty,
on that.
man.
Oh, it was great.
No, it was gross. I just
All
like
right.
the commercials with the monkeys. I remember those.
Collin, give us a NAPE update. What did you see last week from NAPE? And I'll go on my rant.
And let's not talk about the Tang at NAPE either.
I wasn't at NAPE, so I don't know.
So I didn't go into the convention, but did the parties. As always, Dave Baggett at Opportune throws the best party. You drink Silver Oak wine, which is great. He's got champagne.
Well, where's the invite for me next year?
Dude, I'm getting cut off these lists.
I'll get you into Vincent Elkins, which I'm calling Vincent Elkins right now. Like, invite us. We're the coolest people here.
I chatted with Mark Kelly at the Opportune party, but not at Mark's party at V&E. But anyway, so Opportune's party was great. The Four Seasons bar was a shit show like normal. Kind of had.
Did you go strap?
Did I what?
Were you strapping?
What does strapping mean?
Collin, what does that mean?
I don't know. I don't know what it means.
The dude's talking about Tang Zero. I have no idea where you're
Tang
going.
and strapping.
All right, Four Seasons, great party.
Okay, but what does strapping mean?
No, that's all right. Just
I mean,
just
it
go.
can mean a couple things, and we'll ask our listeners to opine on what that actually means. But how was it?
Radio edit. No, it was fun. It was fun. I was a little worn out. I'd gone out with my two former assistants, Stacy and Claire, on Tuesday night, and we just wound up getting lit. We were like little teenage girls just chatting and rumor mongering and gossiping.
Did you have a car service or limo? What was it?
Uber.
Stretch? Oh, Uber.
The
okay.
Uber.
He's a man of the people.
Yeah.
You
So-
are a man of the people.
Safety first.
Heck yeah. I Ubered there because
If you had Boss Hogs like that old, was it a caddy with like the Longhorn?
With the Longhorns?
That
Oh, yeah.
would have been
Dude, we need to
super
get a
ball.
digital Wildcatters caddy like that.
Opportune basically had kind of stretch limo, old timey car out front. It was pretty cool because his thing's kind of the Gatsby.
We had a party on Tuesday night, I think. Us, Combo Curve and Tracks. It was good.
Was that you that tweeted out like drinks on me?
Yeah.
Okay, that
Yeah.
was cool. But Chuck wasn't
Why'd you
invited.
not
I
come?
wasn't invited.
Why'd y'all not come? You saw it.
It was awesome. Chuck, where were you?
I wasn't invited. I didn't know.
It's open invite. All you had to do is say you wanted to go.
Dude, I love it.
Mm.
Y'all just don't
Tang
want to.
Zero. Sponsored by Tang
All
Zero.
right. So back-to-back weeks. Here we go. The finger of the week. Dun, dun, dun. Inserting the video now.
Who's
All
the
right.
finger of the week?
All right.
by the way, from that party that we had, some guy from Wyoming was there. He works for a mineral fund. And he's like, dude, I love BDE. He's like, I skipped straight to finger of the week. That's the best part of the show. And so
Well, for you Wyoming fans and golfers out there, the finger of the week goes to Aaron Rodgers because that fucker has like a 3 handicap. If you don't know anything about golf, you can Google it. He entered the AT&T Pro-Am listing a 10 handicap, and him and his partner won the Pro-Am. And no one would say anything because it's Aaron Rodgers. But Keith Miller, who's now my favorite PGA Tour player, because he was like, this is bullshit, dude. He's like, did you win? He's like, well, if Aaron Rodgers, like, the fact that we beat everyone but Aaron Rodgers because he cheated, like, we won. I love that. But Aaron, you're an asshole because that's cheating.
I don't know much about golf, but I'm assuming that's a 10-stroke handicap.
Basically
essentially for-
7 shots he basically stole
Yeah.
from the field.
Got
So,
you. And I mean, he's an elite athlete, so you figure
Exactly.
that his golf game's got to be somewhat decent.
Cheater.
Have you seen Charles Barkley though? I mean, let's not immediately go to that.
He's fixed his game.
Yeah, Barkley has gotten better. That weird
But
kind
that's
of.
We need to get Barkley on the
that's
show.
one of
and-
the worst high-profile sandbagging stories I've ever heard.
Oh, and no one wanted to say anything. But
What did he
but
get for winning?
I don't know. I'll have to
Like,
look
was
that
there a
up.
purse? Was there a prize for it?
I don't
He
think
now-
his amateurs.
He
are
now
out
has
to.
won as many pro golf tournaments as he has Super Bowls.
Damn.
There we go.
That
Not
was a
to,
burn.
not to have to go to the Jets.
That was, yeah.
That's
that was
right.
a burn. All right. That wraps up today's show. If you don't mind helping us out, sharing the show with a friend, share it on LinkedIn, share it on Twitter, share it on Instagram. Tag Kirk. He's trying to build up his followers. He needs-
Yeah.
Trying to get some followers. I heard him talking to Jules early in the office.
I
so
just
need you
want to
help
go
me.
walk into a restaurant like Chuck, and everyone goes, "It's Chuck Yates."
No, they say fatty. Nimble. It's nimble fatty.
So I told Kirk he needs a nickname. People don't know you until you
I
get a
said,
nickname.
at NAPE, I said the single most obnoxious thing I think I've ever said in my life. I'm at the opportune party, and some guy walks up to me and goes, "Oh my gosh, it's Nimble Fatty." And I said, "Hey, Chuck Yates." And he goes, "I know, I met you." And I said, "Sometimes I have to tell people my name just because they can't believe they're in the presence of me."
We need to stop this, man.
Yes.
This is getting
You
ridiculous.
can't create your own.
He
nickname.
laughed.
That's the
In
problem.
all fairness, he laughed. He knew I was kidding.
All right. We will be back next week. Schedule's changing up a bit next week. BDE, Big Digital Energy, will be out first thing Tuesday morning. So if you want to listen to it on your commute to work, listen to it before the office, listen to it when you're working out, because that's what gets you fucking pumped up, is listening to us talk about
Absolutely.
energy news. It'll be out first thing Tuesday morning. So check it out, share it with a friend. Catch you next week.